Welcome back to PC-98 Paradise, the series where we take a close look at classic games for the NEC PC-98, the most popular Japanese PC series of the early 1990s. Today I'm playing Edge, another one that wasn't particularly popular or important, but is still one of the better known side-scrollers for the PC-98. It also happens to be from one of my personal favorite developers, TGL. Edge was only their third game ever. Second, really, when you consider that Sword Dancer Zoukango was made mostly with reused assets from Sword Dancer 1. So basically, after making a fighting game RPG for their first game, they decided to try their hand at a more conventional action game. How'd they do? Let's find out. The game comes in the typical TGL clamshell case. Inside, we have simply a black and white manual. The game is stored on 6 floppy disks, and as you can see, I have the 5¼ floppy disk version. Though Sword Dancer Zoukango also had hard drive support, for that one you had to just manually copy all the files to your hard drive. So this is the first game to have that familiar TGL install screen. When installation is complete, we simply navigate to the Edge folder on the hard drive and run edge.bat. First of all, I'm happy to say that unlike most of the Sword Dancer games, this one runs perfectly on my PC-98, so no need for ER cache. Even the music works correctly. From the title screen you can choose to watch the opening. Why didn't they just do it that way when they released Farland Story 1 and 2 later, instead of requiring a separate executable? But anyway, let's watch this opening, which begins with a bunch of English text. It is for a long time that in the planet, the Earth, the useless control system, the government, is no sense.
The mankind family keeps on being a leading figure against any other else. Even if the area called once Japan moves right on the equator, the huge magnetic storm forms. 40% of the Eurasian continent comes to the no man's land, and the new space colony, which has the capacity of 40,000 people, suddenly disappears. In spite of that...
This is way too long. You can pause and read the rest of this if you want. Let me translate the important parts of what was said there while showing some clips from the opening. The year is 2352. Kind of refreshing that they chose such a distant year. By now, the Earth's magnetic field has shifted, making most of the world uninhabitable. Roughly 30,000 displaced people moved to a space colony, but it was strangely lost with no explanation. Back on Earth, the two population centers of Asia are Hong Kong and what was once Japan. Wow, this game rips off Blade Runner almost as badly as Hideo Kojima. And that movie took place in 2019, not 2352. The world is ruled by the Zaibatsu. Just in case anyone watching isn't familiar with the term Zaibatsu, they were the huge family-owned companies of Japan until they were broken up after World War II. Anyway, the Zaibatsu in the game are the Tenkai on the former islands of Japan and Fatty in Hong Kong. Don't ask me why they're called Fatty, but that's the name of the Hong Kong Zaibatsu in the game, and how I'll be referring to them throughout the video. Let's start the game in order to get the real story. There are long cutscenes throughout the game which make the action stages attached to it feel almost like a bonus. We are taken to the apartment of our protagonist in Kyoto, where he is rudely awakened by the taste of steel in his mouth. The deliberately complicated and mature plot of this game is really not for kids, by the way. So if you are a kid, please turn the video off now. This is the honor system here. I promise to see you back in the next video with something more kid-friendly. Anyway, so for the adults still here, our rude visitor has come to hire our main protagonist, and it doesn't look like he has much of a choice. This is Kikumaru Sakakibara. They really gave him some sort of samurai-sounding name there. He formerly worked for a sort of guns-for-hire organization called LOD, but went freelance and now calls himself an Edge. Edge may seem like a weird name for a game where you don't use an edged weapon, but as the game explains, the word edge is always associated with danger, like the edge of a cliff or a blade's edge. I don't know if that's necessarily true. You could also have an edge over your opponent. That's not dangerous, unless you're the opponent. As for his guest, while it may look like Sailor Moon with a gun, this is Rim F. Hackman, and we learn that she's from Fatty, the Hong Kong Zaibatsu, who often used to hire Kikumaru through his old organization. He's never met Rim before, but apparently there's no escaping his old client.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Kikumaru wants nothing to do with whatever job Rim has for him, so she decides to use unconventional methods and tells everyone to leave the room. At first I thought she was talking to the player, but it's revealed at the end of the scene that she has a whole army behind her. Her unconventional methods are not what it looks like at first. As she kisses him, she makes him swallow a tiny medical device called a micro machine.
This is the Micro Machine Man, presenting the most midget miniature motorcade of Micro Machine. Each one has dramatic details, terrific trim, precision paint jobs, plus incredible Micro Machine pocket playsets.
But this micro machine isn't for his health. Instead, it contains a virus that will melt his brain if she flicks a switch or if she should die. I really can't help but feel sorry for Kikumaru throughout the game. So Kikumaru agrees to work for Rim, but under the condition that he gets another kiss without a micro machine later, along with a quote-unquote full course. And Rim says, okay, if he succeeds, she'll think about it. It does seem a little messed up that he wants to sleep with the woman who is basically trying to kill him. It gets even weirder when he later asks in the helicopter if she's like, what, about 15? And Rim angrily responds that she's a grown 23-year-old. Anyway, the job Rim wants him to do is retrieve a stolen piece of technology Fatty developed called the Brain Eater. She hasn't been told exactly what it is, so they can only guess from the name. But she does know that it contains the data on the virus she made Kikumaru swallow, so now he has to retrieve it. It was taken by the Tenkai, the Japan Zaibatsu, who are on high alert, so they'll have to take a secret underground train from Osaka. The Tenkai's headquarters is in Makuhari, Chiba, so that's gonna be one hell of an underground train ride. The first stage takes place in the world's largest slum in Osaka. Edge can be described as sort of a side-scrolling beat-em-up. Kikumaru uses his demon club to beat the crap out of the enemies. He can also jump with up and block with the right trigger. Wait, you mean they wasted a perfectly good jump button on block? By the way, Edge can be thought of as a precursor to TGL's much better action game, Briganti, and in that one they reversed it so that jump is the right trigger and up is block. Edge also has some of the other same moves as Briganti. Press down and attack mid-air for a downward thrust. You can tap forward to dash, and while doing that you can press down and attack to do a sliding sweep. Get in close and you might even be able to grab and throw your enemies, which can then hit and knock down the others. Press both trigger buttons together for a special move, which uses up some life. This is useful when you become surrounded. Press escape to pause, and from the menu here you can change characters, just like in Briganti, by pressing left and right. Rim plays almost exactly the same. Even her attack, which you'd think would have a shorter reach, is, if anything, actually a little longer, except when she's jumping. Their attacks even deal the same damage. Their special moves are probably the biggest difference. Power-ups include a temporary attack bonus, temporary sub-weapon which circles the player, life restoration items, and life max upgrades. These are accumulated throughout the entire game, so you're not going to want to miss these. You also may have noticed this blinking dot in the corner, which simply shows which way to go. The pause menu also has some of the same options as the config menu. There's a 200 line mode in case you have an old, weak PC-98. There's also a speed setting that can be convenient if you just want to run through a stage quickly, but I'll keep it on the default speed, 4. The graphics, scrolling, and animation are all pretty good by PC-98 standards. Consoles, or even the X68000 and FM Towns, were better for this kind of game, but TGL was always one of the companies pushing the limits of what could be done on this system. So in the first stage we take down a couple of bikers and then get to a big hole which leads to what the game calls the second Kowloon Walled City. Here, after doing much of the same but underground, we'll meet Bobby McGregor from the Kowa Kaikei Takasaki Gumi, a group in the game which doesn't play a big part in the plot, so you can just think of them as working for the Tenkai. Bobby sends some sort of loader robot after us. I've owned this game for over 20 years, but I've never got past this boss until now. I would always just lose here, get sent back to the beginning, and say, well, that game was okay, but let's go play something else. If you try to fight this boss normally, you'll never win. Strategies for all the bosses are available on Gyu Shabu's page. The only way is to just keep using your special move, which I never would have thought to do, but anyway, it will die before you do, and it works with either character. Afterward, Bobby will show us to the linear tube, which is what they call the underground railway. Your data gets saved at the beginning of each stage, and you have unlimited continues. This one, of course, is the subway stage. What beat-em-up would be complete without one? Hey, this game kind of reminds me of Zenki FX too, though Edge doesn't have a two-player mode, unfortunately. At the front of the train, Rim connects the train's data jack to her mind, so she can hack in and change the train's destination to the Tenkai headquarters in Chiba. And we learn that Kikumaru hasn't gotten cybernetic brain implants like everybody else. Rim can't believe that anyone could possibly live without cyberspace. I guess it's like trying to live without a smartphone now. But apparently most people in the game's world just use it to play some sort of online game. Kikumaru doesn't see the value of living in a virtual world, and he also says in a later scene that he's afraid that if he got the implants, others would be able to see into his mind as well. But anyway, before Rim can finish hacking the train, it comes to a sudden stop and Kikumaru and Rim are thrown from the train. It's Bobby, who isn't done trying to kill them yet, and tries to run them over. This part is easy, but is still one of the stupidest parts in the game. The train moves faster than you can run, so you're going to get hit by it a bunch of times no matter how well you do. But if you just keep running and jump over most of the boxes, you eventually win after a short amount of time, and it just restores all your HP afterward anyway. It's annoying because you feel like you're getting your ass kicked, and then after a certain amount of time it's like, game over, you win. Anyway, Rim and Kikumaru take a side tunnel where they meet a guy named Sato from the same organization as Bobby. This second stage boss is actually one of the toughest in the game, and every time you lose you have to do the subway stage and the stupid running part again. To have a chance of winning, you have to get some distance from him and then do a sliding sweep and try to attack him from behind when he gets up. If you're really lucky, you can get him stuck here on the side with you behind him, and then you're basically home free. Afterward, Sato won't talk, other than to tell them to watch out for the ninjas in the History Museum beneath Tenkai's headquarters. Okay, so stage 3. We've got stuff falling on us from above, so I guess we'd better run. Whoops, didn't see that jump coming. Oh well, luckily it was the beginning of the stage. Wait, this is the beginning of stage 2 again. So that's right, that part after the boss is still considered part of stage 2. You've got to do that stupid running part, hope you manage to beat Sato, and then also make sure to make this jump all in one go. Okay, so this time let's just walk. Ah, you can grab onto the ceiling here, and then it's just another cutscene. This one shows the Fatty organization for the first time. Their leader is Shun-Hong Lee, and with her always are her 4 secretaries/bodyguards, who are updating her on Rim and Kikumaru's progress. They're interrupted though by an unidentified man, who they tell to get back to his post. He's dressed exactly like Kikumaru, so at first I thought this was Kikumaru, but it isn't. We'll find out who he is later. But back to Rim and Kikumaru, who are at the gate at the History Museum, which it turns out is actually Tenkai's weapon research facility. This game never passes up a chance to show off Rim's ass, by the way. Rim hacks into the gate through cyberspace and is on to stage 3. This one has platforming too. You can grab the platforms from below and then press block to swing yourself up. Wait, you press block to swing up? Are you sure this isn't a jump button? In these wide open areas, you're going to want to search around and make sure that you don't miss any Life Max upgrades. For the boss, we meet a hologram of a ninja who asks why people working for Fatty would risk triggering a war between the Zaibatsu like this. Kikumaru finds this question strange since it was the Tenkai who started it by stealing the Brain Eater in the first place. But anyway, the ninja sends a security robot he calls the Goddess after them. Why does a security robot need to have boobs? But this boss is pretty easy since it's possible to grab and throw it. In the next stage, we're finally in Tenkai's headquarters, which has a lot of platforming and sloped floors. If you could grab onto the walls too, this game would feel almost like Strider. This stage also has a part where only Rim can pass through due to the low ceiling. Kikumaru finds it strange that they've been able to get through Tenkai's security so easily, and throughout the stage he keeps stopping to say that something's not right. Rim tells him that no matter what happens, she trusts him. Kikumaru doesn't believe her and just kind of teases her about it. Seems like a meaningless scene, but it actually turns out to be kind of important. After what looks like a ninja castle, we get the reveal of the big boss, stolen straight from Geese Howard. It's the Tenkai leader, known simply as Tenkai, and I feel like this design has got to be ripped off from somewhere. Maybe Circuitry Man? Anyway, he's over 200 years old and all wired up to the knowledge of the Tenkai. His bodyguard, that ninja from earlier named Yukikaze, reveals the reason why we've had such an easy time getting here. Their security network was getting hacked through cyberspace this entire time by someone from Fatty. Rim says, "It wasn't me." But anyway, now we have to fight Yukikaze. For this one, you can just use the standard strategy of attacking him while crouching in the corner. But as you can probably guess, the next cutscene is going to reveal a lot, so turn back now if you want. No English patch for this game yet, as far as I know, by the way. Kikumaru demands that Tenkai hands over the Brain Eater, but after some brief confusion, we find out that the Brain Eater was never stolen from Fatty in the first place. It was an original invention developed by Tenkai themselves. But that means... what the hell? This character just keeps getting less trustworthy. But just then, Rim's friends from Fatty decide to drop in, including their leader, Lee. She demands the Brain Eater, but when Tenkai refuses, she doesn't hesitate. Lee gives Tenkai a choice: have millions of his people killed while they search the entire island, or just hand it over and only he dies. And knowing what kind of man he is, she knows which one he'll choose. And so he hands it over right away. You know, for a character who is made to look so menacing and inhuman in the opening, he's actually a pretty decent guy. Lee thanks Kikumaru for his hard work, and Kikumaru asks for his payment as well as the cure for the micro machine in his brain. But Lee says she has a better idea. How about this? Oh, come on now, Kikumaru, just let her go. Why should we care about her at all anymore? But Lee can see from his reaction that Kikumaru does indeed care a lot about what happens to Rim, and so she shows him now why Rim hired Kikumaru in the first place. It turns out that Rim's boyfriend was Kikumaru's old partner and close friend, Wen Dimira. But Wen can't be here, says Kikumaru. He killed him himself. But it seems that not even Wen knows why he's still alive, since he has amnesia. Kikumaru asks Rim if she knew he was the one who killed her boyfriend when she hired him, and indeed, she did. But she knew that she could trust Kikumaru because Wen always spoke so highly of him. Even though she'd never met him, Wen told her everything about Kikumaru. She even knows his favorite booze and cigarettes are Wild Turkey and Lucky Strike. Wow, I'm kinda surprised they actually used real brands. And besides, she knew that Kikumaru wouldn't have killed Wen without a good reason. But anyway, Wen says he'll be taking what's his now, so long. And then it turns out that Tenkai is still alive, and when Lee tries to finish him off, Yukikaze jumps in and slices her hand off. So Lee and her associates make a hasty retreat with the Brain Eater. With his dying breath, Tenkai asks Yukikaze and Kikumaru to retrieve the Brain Eater. No, destroy it. Why does he ask Kikumaru? Because, he says, after overhearing the previous conversation, he knows that Kikumaru must hate Lee and Fatty with a passion by now. Kikumaru agrees, but of course only for a heavy sum of money. And next it's a cutscene at Fatty's headquarters. When's the next stage, anyway? Wen leaves a note for Rim saying, "Come here when you wake up." Then there's a very fan-servicey scene with Lee's 4 bodyguards bathing. Guess TGL really wanted to make adult games. It's no wonder they established their adult brand, Giga, later the same year, with the release of the first variable Geo game. Anyway, the scene is mostly just Wen threatening the four of them and telling them to let Lee know not to lay a finger on Rim, no matter where she tries to go. Anyway, let's get back to Kikumaru and Yukikaze trying to sneak into Fatty headquarters. I really thought they were going to let me play Yukikaze now on this stage, but no, you can only play as Kikumaru. You have to get through the loading docks and then survive 2 waves of enemies in this platforming area. It's one of the most difficult action sections of the game. For most other parts, you can just run past all the enemies if you get sick of repeating the stage over and over again. The boss is Wen, and we hear the story of how Kikumaru was involved in a plot to fake Wen's death and sneak him in a body bag into another organization. Probably Tenkai, Kikumaru now thinks. Kikumaru put him in the body bag himself, and never heard from him again. When he learned that the job was commissioned by Fatty, he assumed it was their intention to kill Wen in the first place, blamed himself for Wen's death, and left his organization, LOD. But Wen now, for some reason, wants to settle things for old time's sake. Wen is just a palette swap of Kikumaru, so this is basically one of those mirror battles. It's not too difficult. The downward thrust served me pretty well. If you're lucky, you'll get him stuck running in place in the corner here, and you can just take him down. Kikumaru didn't mean to kill Wen. After all, he was too tough to die the first time, but it looks like he will this time. In his last moments, he gets his memories back and asks Kikumaru to defeat Lee and to take care of Rim. And speak of the devil, here she is. Rim reacts pretty well to having her boyfriend killed twice by the same person. She says what's most important now is to take out Lee, like Wen wanted. For the next stage, we're inside the Sky Hook, which is the space elevator shown in the opening. At the end of the stage, we fight all 4 of Lee's bodyguards, 2 at a time. I didn't find any of them particularly difficult. Next, we're face to face with Lee, but it turns out she isn't here, but rather inside what the space hook is attached to. It isn't attached to the moon as it's rumored among the commoners. No, it's attached to the space colony that disappeared over 100 years ago. In fact, it never really disappeared at all. Fatty just hid it from the public and took it as their base. As for the 30,000 people aboard, well, they had no use for them. Now Fatty plans to use their technology to evolve the minds of all humankind beyond their normal capacity. But first, they're going to destroy the space hook with our heroes aboard, even though dropping it means destroying most of Hong Kong, Korea, southern China, Kyushu, and Shikoku. So for the next part, we just have to run back through the space hook. I thought I'd try and see what happens if you go the other way, and the result wasn't surprising. At the end of the run, our heroes find that there are no parachutes for them to escape, but Yukikaze uses a self-destruct bomb he keeps inside his body to blow a huge hole in the wall and throw Rim and Kikumaru outside. As they're falling, they're caught by Yukikaze on a jetpack. Oh good, he's okay. But he introduces himself as Yukikaze number 2295. The Yukikaze they've been with up until now was Yukikaze number 2294. Turns out there are a bunch of him and they're all clones. Okay then, it doesn't take long before Rim and Kikumaru just forget about it and start acting like it's the same Yukikaze. Meanwhile, Lee has just undergone surgery to be connected to what they call the Hand of God, made using the data stored in the Brain Eater. So this is the knowledge of the Tenkai, she says. But our heroes have arrived at the space colony on a shuttle, and Lee, in true supervillain form, welcomes them in. In this stage, you fight xenomorphs. What game hasn't ripped off aliens at this point? The stage is pretty easy to just run through if you want, but the boss room has a whole bunch of power-ups that are quite difficult to collect before falling down to the boss. Some can only be collected with Rim, thanks to her slightly higher running jump, but you'll want to get as many as possible. At the very bottom, you're going to want to make this difficult jump and collect the attack power bonus in order to have any chance of beating the boss. Gyu Shabu's strategy guide says that Rim can beat it by just standing in place and attacking, but it's far from a sure thing. After defeating the creature, Yukikaze has a hunch about what the Hand of God is. You see, if you try to put too much knowledge into a human brain, it will overflow.
See, if you take a gallon of knowledge and pour it into a shot glass of a brain, you're gonna spill some.
Are you our dog?
If you could only change the human body at the DNA level. So that's what they needed the Brain Eater for, says Rim. It contains all data on even the previously unknown regions of the brain. So the final stage is another one where I found it possible to just run through if you want. At the end of the stage, you'll want to make sure to jump up here and grab these hidden power-ups. Our end boss, Lee, of course now refers to herself as a god, and we have to fight her in her new body. It takes some skill to beat this one, but I think I've mostly cracked the strategy. It's not the hardest boss in the game. But Lee isn't dead, and she says she's about to send the data in the Brain Eater to everyone's brains via cyberspace, creating her perfect world of superhumans. And just when it looks like all is lost, Rim simply shoots her in the back of the head. And so it's all over. Kikumaru gets his kiss, but we can only wonder about the rest of his payment. Over the credits, we get images of humanity recovering from the disaster when the skyhook fell from the sky. After the credits, the epilogue text explains that since the Brain Eater was destroyed, there's no way now to get rid of the micro machine in Kikumaru's brain. I guess you'll just have to protect me forever, says Rim, and Kikumaru says to himself, well, that doesn't sound too bad either. Man, I can't understand how we're supposed to just forgive Rim for everything. I guess we're supposed to accept that there was no other way she could have gotten Kikumaru to help her, and also to feel sorry for how she was being used by Fatty and ends up getting double-crossed. But no, I will never forgive Rim, even if Kikumaru does. Kikumaru never wanted to be part of this adventure in the first place. But anyway, the list of credits in Edge is almost exactly the same as Sword Dancers. The duo of Yoshitaka Nishi and Hiroyuki Kudo are back again. One notable difference, though, is that while Sword Dancer's character designs were done by TGL's own in-house graphic artist, Tomoaki Hamada, for Edge they hired Tetsuro Yoshikawa, also known as the adult manga artist Kirara Moe. I'm kind of surprised this is the only TGL game he designed the characters for, since they do look very TGL to me. It must be something about the way they do the lines and painting on the PC-98 that makes them all look that way, regardless of who the character designer is. The music was Yuko Anzai again, who composed the music for Sword Dancer 1 and 2, though credited as Yuko Hikino in the first one. I always find her compositions to be a little bland, but the soundtrack in Edge is definitely an improvement over the first Sword Dancer. There are some memorable tracks like the Stage 1 BGM, though none are exactly masterpieces. This drum roll sound sure gives me flashbacks to Sword Dancer. If I could go back and praise one thing in Sword Dancer 1, it would be the way that much of the cutscene music was tailor-made to align with what's going on screen. In Edge, they only did this for the opening and ending, but I have to wonder if they were planning to do it in more scenes, since there are so many of them where the music just ends partway through without repeating. The expository dialogue in Edge is really meaty and full of information, and I guess that's why they decided to go with manual text advance in this one. By the way, I recommend using the keyboard for advancing the text. With the gamepad, it sometimes skips multiple pages with only one press. Another similarity with Sword Dancer 1 is that it really sounds like the monaural FM arrangements by Takahiro Yonemura, aka Kemul, were just kind of phoned in, while they put all of their resources into the MIDI arrangements. The LA MIDI mode uses a bunch of custom instrument data, and with GS MIDI they even added MIDI sound effects, including a short voice sample. It's a little weird though that it's the same low-pitch voice for Rim and all the female enemies. Surely they could have easily changed the pitch on the MIDI module. Unfortunately, on my PC-98 anyway, there's a bug where I'll often lose gamepad support while playing with GS MIDI enabled. This probably has something to do with the fact that on PC-98, joystick inputs are handled by the FM sound chip. Something about using both MIDI and FM for the sound effects screws up the chip, or something like that. I don't know the real technical reason. The gamepad does fix itself though if you play until the next scene with the keyboard. But anyway, since this game has both GS and LA MIDI, this is going to be the perfect test for my new CM500, the only Roland MIDI module which handles both in one unit. A couple of viewers informed me that this model has a bug, which makes the vibrato too fast when using it in LA MIDI mode. It's usually hard to notice, but still seems like a pretty careless mistake for a piece of professional-grade music equipment originally priced at nearly $900. Roland has acknowledged the bug when asked, and in recent years, fans have come up with a relatively simple mod to fix it. I'm considering modding mine someday, but for now let's just use the unmodified unit for this comparison. You won't notice the issue in the first stage BGM. Edge has a sound test, but it isn't in the game. It was included as a bonus in TGL's next game, Sword Dancer Zoukongo 93. There is a stage select code in Edge though. From the title screen with the cursor on config, press Shift, Z, and X at the same time. The option to select a stage will appear at the bottom of the config menu, and then make sure to select Continue to start. Don't bother trying stages A, B, or C, they seem to just make the game freeze. Also, the later stages will be really hard since you won't have any of the Life Max upgrades from earlier in the game. TGL at the time was generally a PC-98 developer, and rarely ported their games to other systems, other than their biggest hits. As Edge wasn't a big hit, it stayed on the PC-98. No ports to mention this time. Edge was a pretty decent action game by 1993 PC-98 standards. The in-game graphics are generally pretty good, and were a step up from Sword Dancer. The game controls pretty well, and the action is actually fun most of the time. There were, however, some balance issues, including a few really tight spots near the beginning that surely frustrated many a player who didn't know the right strategies to win. Stages are also generally pretty short, and you'll get sick of retrying the more difficult ones. But keep at it, and soon you can learn to be an Edge Lord yourself. Wait, what? But the gameplay is way overshadowed by the cutscenes, which look great and can be a real treat for fans of PC-98 style graphics. And while I may not have found all the characters likable, the story was certainly interesting and engaging. So overall, it was an okay game. Not excellent, but worth playing through if you know what you're getting into. If it looks like something you'd enjoy, then please do give it a try. Thanks for watching this episode of PC-98 Paradise. This is just one of many PC-98 games I've always wanted to make a video about. Hope you enjoyed it. And it's all thanks to these patrons and YouTube members that I'm able to do this. Thanks to the rest of you as well for joining me on this one, and hope to have you back again next time.